Greetings, salutations, and welcome back to the Science Nights. I am Josh.
I'm Adam.
And today we are graced with the presence from Dr. Brandon Rodriguez of JPL, which is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory over at NASA. Now, you're calling us today from California?
Yep, calling in from Pasadena.
Right on. And first of all, sir, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It's always a pleasure to meet someone who is actually a scientist and actually educated, while we ourselves are just amateurs. So can you first not only tell us a little bit about yourself, tell our audience a little bit about yourself, but also can you tell us what where your education is?
Sure. I'm a PhD chemist by trade. I went to Northwestern University is where I went for graduate school. I went to Vanderbilt University before that, majored in chemistry as well. After that, this was quite some time ago. I'm an old man now. I worked in the private sector for about 8 years. Worked in alternative energy before becoming a classroom teacher. So made a fairly large career shift and taught chemistry, a common theme in my life. And so I taught in high school for a couple years. While doing that, I got the phone call from NASA Education, and they said, would you like to effectively do both? Would you like to be an educator and a scientist? And that was a really exciting prospect to me. So I joined here at JPL just a little over a year ago through Texas State University that holds a grant for educator professional development. Allows me to go into schools, work with teachers, and bring my passion for science into the classrooms.
That's awesome, man. That's a very storied way to go about it. Like recently we had Stephen Smith on our show, and he has a different way of going about it, but the core is still teaching, it seems like. Why teaching? What made you take that career shift?
Well, I think for me, as much as I really did enjoy working in the private sector, I had a blast. It was a great job. It was full of exciting opportunities. I got to travel the world. I got to do cool frontier science. But I didn't feel like I was giving back. I didn't feel like it was purposeful other than for myself. And I think working in education, despite it being clearly, a very difficult job, an underappreciated job, you have the opportunity to put that passion for science as something that's going to grow in someone else. You're really playing the ripple effect game instead of just taking care of yourself. So the idea of being able to teach was just really exciting for me to share the love I had for science and the great career I had in science, to hopefully share that with the future scientists of the world.
Yeah, that's a very noble cause.
Yeah, exactly.
Something that I maybe might aspire to if I ever decide to go back to college. Can you walk us through maybe like your average day at JPL now that you've been integrated into this program for more than a year?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really a trip, and I'll tell you, it's as exciting as it was on day one. My day starts with walking by the Curiosity rover, right?
Nice.
my day includes walking past a museum of all the missions that have been sent out of this facility over the last 4 or 5 decades. So you really are part of something. You're part of something big,
like a legacy.
And yeah, right. And I mean, just the history of the science that's been done here, the wild ideas, the genius, the invention. I get to be next to that every day, and it's, in a lot of ways, it's intimidating, to be honest, because you see these guys that have worked on a mission for 40 years, that they understand the ins and outs of this aspect of space that no one will ever compete. And to sit there and listen to them and talk with them, you feel small sometimes, but
I couldn't imagine.
The same time,
I feel small talking to you.
Yeah. It's but what you learn, what you can glean, is just incredible. And again, I get to, to answer your question about what I do in my day, I get to take those conversations, I get to turn it into a lesson for students, and then share that excitement. So when I go into a classroom, whether it's talking to students or talking to teachers that may not have that science background, I just try to be the messenger, the mode of conveyance of that excitement for science.
Do you have like a wow moment from your time at JPL so far? Like one that's like puts you aback and you're like, can't function, can't function.
Yeah, I think, and it's funny because it happens. The same wow moment can occur, really. We have something up here called the Mars Yard. So this is a testing bed that's been effectively a recreated Martian terrain. And that's used for testing the rover in certain environments. Effectively, the Curiosity rover that's driving around on Mars sends us photos and videos of its surroundings. And if we see something that looks dangerous or could harm the rover, we build it here and we test it, where if something goes wrong here, no problem, right? We can fix it, and etc. You can't fix the one on Mars, right? So the real wow moment was to be up there and to walk on this space that looks like Mars and to see a rover driving on it, and understanding how that science is helping another robot, millions of miles away driving around on Mars looking at the same thing. I think that's just really exciting.
Yeah, I've always appreciated that. I don't think it was ever put forth, I don't think it was ever shown to me until I actually did see The Martian, and they had was it Curiosity that they have on that, or whatever the
they had the Pathfinder.
Pathfinder, sorry.
Robots,
yeah, they have the duplicate Pathfinder there, and it's like, oh, of course they would do that. Why would you not build a copy of it, because you can't work on it elsewhere?
Right.
That makes perfect sense.
That's right. Yeah. So if a wheel gets destroyed on the Martian rover, there's no Pep Boys to take it to, right? So
exactly.
You got to keep that one safe.
Absolutely.
So our last episode was kind of a broad overview of chemistry. We're wondering what it is about chemistry you find fascinating, or that everybody should know about chemistry.
Yeah, it's funny, right? I mean, you're asking a chemist, so I'm going to give you the very pro-chemistry answer. I mean, I love science. I had no astronomy background before coming to NASA, so I've been drinking from the fire hose ever since. I get it. I mean, it's definitely, it's amazing. It's cool to be a part of. But when I look at especially the kind of typical courses you take in high school or college, physics, chemistry, biology, for me, there's no comparison. Chemistry is the best. I look at these curriculum I see in high school biology, you're effectively just categorizing things, right? In high school physics, you're using math to explain why things work. But in chemistry, that's where you really start to create, where you start to transform. I think even in just the most basic high school chemistry class, you're given something and being told, make it into something else. And what a powerful science that must be, right? We're not just describing why, we're actually doing it. And I think back to these old days of alchemy, right? And the idea of creating something from something else, and that's what chemistry is every day.
I was just going to ask you that. I was just going to ask you if you saw the parallels between alchemy and chemistry.
Yeah, right. I mean, that was the push, right? And I think it's what was kind of a silly science that we kind of laugh at now. This is the core principle is the same. I was going to mention I had when I was a sophomore, I took organic chemistry, and the professor gave us exams where it was just one sheet of paper, and in the top left corner it said there was a picture of one molecule, bottom right hand corner was another molecule, and he just said, get there, right? You can do it in 2 steps,
awesome.
You can do it in 100 steps, right? And that's at the time very intimidating to see a blank sheet of paper, but that's the core of chemistry, right? You can do anything. You can make anything from something else.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no kidding. So from a pop culture side of things, can I give you an RV and a chemistry set and you make me a bunch of methamphetamine?
It's funny, right? I think it's weird what promotes science in culture, right? But like everyone knows Breaking Bad now, and everyone knows like a couple key chemical terms now that they probably shouldn't, be yelling too much in the streets. But yeah, it is funny that's what everyone knows. I'll tell you a funny story actually. Because of that show, many companies fell victim to that kind of notion that it was so easy to make meth. And a lot of companies, including the one I worked at, had to start inventorying all their glassware. So just to make sure that no one was stealing a couple things and doing this at home, which was like, kind of a silly idea even in principle. But when you had a company of 5,000 employees, that was a lot of glassware to inventory.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
So I'm not actually happy with the Breaking Bad show. Great show, but didn't do a lot for my paperwork.
Sure, I understand that. So we've been corresponding back and forth for about a week prior to this because Stephen was kind enough to set us up. One of the things that you had mentioned was the way that we communicate about science in terms of not just science, but the way we communicate in general, in terms of how we get knowledge passed from one to another. Like instead of saying, I read on Ars Technica that there's going to be a new gadget coming out that makes your pinkies fly, you say, I heard. So I was wondering, what's your take on that, and is there any way to kind of switch that paradigm, you think?
Yeah, it is unfortunate, right? I think it's the source of one of my greatest frustrations. I think it's really only magnified in the last year or two, that we have this odd notion that word of mouth is somehow always credible. It's very odd to me that you can say, I read an article, and then all of a sudden everyone says, oh, an article. Like, oh, this must be. They don't say it's an article on BuzzFeed, right? Or some clickbait
or
thing, right?
Facebook post or something.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And where. Did they even read the article? Sometimes I wonder.
Yeah,
or did they
it's just
see
a headline.
Hit like. So this is definitely the fault of the Internet of Things kind of just taking on an uglier form than we want, and it is unfortunate. That being said, whose responsibility is it? Like, I certainly don't hold Facebook accountable that nobody reads, right? That's not their fault. That's our fault. And I think that I try to at least use my language, and I try to especially convey this to students, that use those kind of sentence frameworks to say things like, not just I heard, but I read an article on CNN, or I saw a video on Scientific American, or something like that, to lay the groundwork that, hey, I know what I'm talking about right now, and I'm citing a credible source. And if you're going to disagree with me, I need you to do the same thing, right? You can cite a credible source. So it's tough. It's a tough cultural phenomenon, but we can beat it with language. We can beat it with proper questioning strategies and dialogue. But that's easier said than done. I know.
Yeah. No, I believe you. One of the things that I find, like, I work in a warehouse, like 9-to-5 job, and often when it comes to a dilemma or a problem or a chink in the system, instead of there being like, okay, how do I work around this? How do I solve this? It's just like, I don't know what to do. Where's the boss? I don't know. Like, so what I'm wondering is, like, do you also see like a decline in critical thinking on like a broad level?
Yeah, I definitely think I do. And again, I think it's an availability of information that the quality control, we're just not used to having to screen that way. I like to tell my students, we were actually just here at the office, we were laughing earlier because this set of like little memes went around about the dangers of dihydrogen monoxide.
Of course, yes.
Dihydrogen monoxide, right? Sounds terrible, right? And you know, and most people know that's water, right? But they make these funny headlines like, if dihydrogen monoxide can cause rust on metal, think about what it's doing to your inside.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
And it works. There are people online that are like, they have sample letters that are sent to companies. Do you have dihydrogen monoxide in this? And they're like, yeah, of course we do. So,
we're Gatorade. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. I think until we bring the caliber of scientific literacy up, until we demand more, then things like this are, of course, going to exist. And it's easy to ridicule it right now, and of course I got my laugh out, but I promise you that someone talking about scientific policy in the government right now, they're scared of dihydrogen monoxide.
That is so disheartening.
Yeah, it's this is the same situation where again you see senators and representatives walking into the floor saying climate change can't be real because I have a snowball in my hand, right?
That's weather.
Until we make, yeah, right, weather versus climate. Yeah, thank you. See, you guys, it's great to hear that like some people get it, but we need more people in positions of power that are scientifically literate.
Yeah.
So,
some of that can change in the voting booth too.
Yeah, absolutely.
As an educator, what is it that you find most encouraging when you walk into like a new classroom or talk to another educator in like the great wild of California? What's the most encouraging thing that you can see as someone who's promoting STEM?
Yeah, it's been really great out here. I think California is really working hard to break down this what I would call cookbook chemistry or cookbook science. When I was in school, when you were in school, we sat in the rows of desks. You came in, you opened your desk, you did your worksheet, you closed your desk, the bell rang, you left. I think that there's been a really strong push to put more sandbox type scenarios in front of students where they have to really, hopefully someday kind of be greater in that critical thinking gap. So instead of follow these steps before the bell rings in a lab, it's all of a sudden, why is this happening? You tell me. You construct a model. Why is this happening? And I think putting that creative control back in the students' hands is going to really nurture the type of science that not that we just need in society, but also we need at NASA, right? We need creative thinkers. We don't need A students. A 4.0 might get you into good school, but it does not get you into NASA, right? Anyone can get good grades, but we need creative thinkers. We need out-of-the-box conceptual thinkers, and I think California is doing a really good job at trying to push that in the classroom.
Is there something like as you go, like because you told us you go to different schools, correct?
Yeah.
As you go to school, is there anything discouraging or disheartening that you'd like to see change, or that you're actually actively combating?
I think I wouldn't say I'm discouraged by it, but I still see the remnants of kind of that textbook-based science, right? We're in a transitional time. I think that there are a lot of teachers who are content to coast. This is how I've done it for 15 years. This is how I'm going to keep doing it. And administration at schools, principals and coaches and stuff like that, they're pushing back on that. But generally, I think it's going well. I mean, clearly, education is a tough field, like I said at the opening, and I don't think they get nearly the support they need. I think that earlier, in the last 10 years or so, the idea was write checks, throw money at schools, get them iPads, something like that. That's not it. That's not the solution. They need to have environments of scientific thinking, of where they can be creative, and I think we're starting to see that now.
Nice.
That's actually really encouraging. I think back to my high school times and stuff, and the one thing that always comes up from just, I guess, my memories, which can be fudged because that was like 12 years ago, was I'm not cut out for science. I'm not smart enough for science. Science is not ingrained in me as a talent. But now I'm looking at it a different way. I'm like, well, anybody can do science. There's no reason not.
Yeah, and it's, when you think about that, how many students got discouraged by science because they were being assessed by a multiple choice exam, right? Like the idea that they were not good at science because they couldn't fill in the blank. What does that have to do with science? Do you think at JPL, everyone's walking around with packets filling in, blanks here.
Scantrons and stuff, yeah.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, that's an absurd way to measure scientific prowess. And I think it's too bad because, kind of like you said, we don't find out till later how much we love science or how good we could be at it. There's like a Pete Holmes, who is a comedian I like.
Sure, I know him,
He said that, now he sits around and listens to TED Talks, right? That he loves leisure learning. Like, as a kid, hated school, hated class, but Friday night now, TED Talks, right?
Yeah.
So, I think if given the right opportunity, the right environment, we would see people passionate about science the way we want them to be.
You said you were opposite.
I was
of me?
opposite when I was in school in the sense of science class was really the only class I was interested in, and I just didn't care about anything else, right? Like,
oh, gotcha.
And now reflecting back, like I should have cared more about math and all those things that are very ingrained in all of this still, but
yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I made it all the way to calculus, and I couldn't tell you how to estimate the area under a curve. I know there's a formula, but man, I couldn't tell you.
Well, math teachers have the hardest job, right? They really have the hardest one, because on the day-to-day, making their content interesting and relevant is certainly the toughest one. As a chemist, there's no problem. At the end of the day, I could blow something up.
Yeah, exactly.
I got attention, right? They're not falling asleep in my class. But if you're teaching calculus, how do you get kids to see calculus every day in their lives?
Make them watch basketball. It's true. Almost every shot made in basketball is a calculus shot, because it's all parabola.
Yeah, and I mean, and especially out here now, like I have a newfound appreciation for the math that was done historically out of this place and continues to be done.
Absolutely.
But again, it's tough to expect a 7th grade teacher to say, well, this is how ion propulsion works on the Dawn mission.
Yeah. What's that?
Yeah.
So we're always looking for new information, literature, modes of communication for science. Do you have any recommendations of books or documentaries or YouTube channels that our audience should check out?
I mean, I wish I had an author for you. So certainly, I think the classics are still great. I love listening not just to TED Talks, but to TED Ed. Yes. I think it's really great, just like short hits on different topics. I think is fantastic, and that way it's it's a little bit more accessible too. I think Neil deGrasse Tyson is still the greatest thing that's happened to science in a long time.
Agreed.
I just finished up Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. That was a great book.
He's such a great writer, and I think it's just a great introduction to get people hooked on science. Right now, what I'm reading as a field, and I should have brought a book to hold up.
I will have an image
really
of it.
Excited about. yeah, you Photoshop it in here. I'm really excited about exoplanets. I think that the search for alien life right now is just such a fascinating topic. Not because I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist, but because all of a sudden this is a really respectable field. This is an active endeavor, and I think that's wild. I grew up watching X-Files, and so my version of what alien life was, you were a crazy person if you believed in aliens. And now we have a field here at NASA, an entire department looking into this, and our mission's designed around where can we find life. And you look at water in the universe, moons of Europa and Enceladus, where we have these vast liquid water oceans. What if there's alien life in there, just in our backyard, just in our own solar system? So I think reading on that right now is certainly a hot field. I think it's really cool to know that this is now a space that could really impact our lives. That we could actually see discoveries out of this without it being just sci-fi.
Yeah, without it being a catastrophe and the White House blows up, which might not be the worst thing, but still.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah.
What was the book that you said you were reading? What is it? You never gave me a title.
I haven't actually started reading these ones, but I bought a stack of of exoplanet books just because I think I've been working so much here with some of the NASA scientists that are in that field, and I want to get caught up. I'm excited about it.
Right on. Well, Brandon, any parting thoughts before we let you go? We've taken up plenty of your time.
No, not at all. I think just please, I hope this this really takes off for you guys. Please keep fighting that good fight. Sharing science with the community. It doesn't have to be a thing where you go to school for a dozen years. It doesn't have to be exclusive. Science does not belong to the higher educated. It should belong to all of us. And until we start to all bring that baseline for what baseline scientific knowledge is through, again, communicating with the public, I don't have high hopes for the world. We really need to change this paradigm. So best of luck to you guys.
Well, thank you. We will do what we can.
Yes, absolutely. And I hope that maybe somewhere down the future we can come back and we can revisit not only chemistry but where you've gone in the span of time between us, since you've been revolving around the sun with the rest of us. All right. Well, thank you very much, sir. And for all of us here at Science Nights, I want to say thank you. Please be sure to like and subscribe. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
See ya.
Bye-bye.